Have you ever heard the saying that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional? If you're someone who is stuck in this state of anxiety, depression, or just feeling stressed and overwhelmed, that might not be the most reassuring thing you've heard, because you're probably thinking, well, if I knew how to stop suffering, then I would. Why would I choose this for myself? It's a nice little saying, but for all intents and purposes, when we're stuck, it doesn't feel like an option. So let me ask you to just consider this question. When you think about the situations in your life that are leaving you feeling anxious, depressed, or stressed, how much of the way you are feeling and experiencing these circumstances are in your mind versus the objective circumstances themselves? This is not me trying to play some kind of mind trick to get you to admit that, yes, it's all in my mind. That might even feel a bit gaslighting. But most people that I ask this question to, when they stop and think about it, think, well, yeah, actually, I can see how the way I'm reacting, the way I'm talking to myself about it, the things that I am believing is a large chunk of what is contributing to this emotional tension and suffering. And for most of us, our minds are out of control. They are running the show. So our minds will react and tell us things, and then we believe them. Because the mind is where thought is, we're having these thoughts, and we think that it's us thinking these thoughts. Maybe you can relate to one day you think something is really true, and then another day it just doesn't feel as true as it did yesterday. This sometimes happens when you make big, grand promises to yourself that you're going to overhaul your lifestyle. You're going to get up earlier, you're going to eat perfectly, you're going to exercise, you're going to journal, you're going to do all the things to optimize your life. And when you're making these plans, you're believing that you're going to be able to just change your life like that. And then you wake up the next morning and there's the thoughts and the feelings and the sense that you're still you and nothing has changed. And your mind has gone back to what it was believing before. We're getting dragged around by our minds everywhere. So if our minds are such a major component in our suffering, seems to me like there's two possible solutions. Number one, if we can change our minds. That means changing how we think. That means those automatic thoughts that are just happening to us, that they change into something else. When we believe the mind, when the mind has a lot of power, it feels like that is us. We feel like we are our minds. And yet you have the capacity to watch your mind. You have the capacity to step back and look at your mind, to become the observer, which means it's possible to rise above the mind, to not be fully identified with the mind. And so if we are not the mind, but the mind is where the suffering is, we can experience relief from our suffering. Bear with me, I'm going to break this down a bit more. If we think about changing our mind, what enables us to change our minds? The way our mind thinks and the way our mind reacts is conditioned by our experiences and affected by our general temperament, the whole nature versus nurture debate. In order to change our automatic thoughts, we need to have new experiences. Well, new experiences can be learning. Anytime you learn something new, you are changing your mind. And for some people, having major experiences that kind of shake up everything the mind has ever believed and clung to, that changes their mind for them. So for me, I became quite unwell in my mid-20s, and that changed everything about how I thought and saw the world and how I felt and my experience of myself as well. And it was a painful evolution. It wasn't like, oh, I got ill and then I suddenly realized how valuable life was. Experience can include using each other to change our minds. If you're watching this video, you're listening to this video, your mind is being changed if you are having any new thoughts or thinking about things in ways that you haven't before. So mind can change through experience, but sometimes we can't seem to create the experiences that we might need to be able to change our minds. It feels like you're in Groundhog Day. The same thing is just happening over and over again, and you don't know how to break the loop and change your mind. This is where the second solution could come into play. And this idea that we are not our minds. If our minds are purely shaped by conditioning and our experiences, do you believe that that is all you are, all there is to you? Biology and your experiences that have then created this conditioned self. Now, you might believe that that's you, and you're more than welcome. We're getting philosophical here, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but my experience, we are, I am, you are, more than your conditioned experience. But if our minds can only react and behave and think according to our conditioning, this is how we just get stuck in who we are, or probably more accurately, the experiences that we are having of ourselves. We get stuck in our suffering because we believe our thoughts, we believe what the mind is telling us, because we think it is us just realizing what is true. So if you are thinking what a failure you are, a lot of the time when you're in it and believing it, you're not thinking to yourself, or you're not saying to yourself, oh, my mind is telling me I'm a failure. You're thinking that actually I am realizing again what a failure I am. So the biggest takeaway through not being your mind and being able to change your mind is just even being able to hold the concept of not believing everything you think, not believing everything the mind tells you. Because how often do you feel ashamed for your reactions, or ashamed for being so judgmental because you think it's you being those things? But when you turn it around, you go like, gosh, my mind is really throwing up a lot of judgments today. Well, now it's your mind. Well, of course we need a mind. We need a mind as a tool to get through life. I am not demonizing the mind, but when we start to see and identify as having another level above mind, even if you need to conceptualize it as this is still in the mind, but just another, like a higher mind, no problem. If you want to get more spiritual with it, no problem. Whatever makes sense to you so that this concept can actually be useful. And at this point, you might be thinking, okay, well then how do I do this? Well, now we're going into the realms of mindfulness. This is what mindfulness practices are about. Because actually what is above the mind? What is above the mind is awareness. And if you're anything like me, when I started understanding these concepts, I thought, that sounds kind of boring. Just awareness, like just nothing. It sounded like nothingness. If I'm not thinking, if I'm not engaging, if I'm not creating, if I'm not being productive, if I'm not placing value on everything that I think, the alternative seemed like an emptiness. It seemed like almost a type of death. But here's what my reality's been, and what I've heard from other people as well, is that when you actually experience that awareness, that non-mind identification, what it really is a feeling of bliss and perfection and safety. I could use the word peace, but I think some people think peace is boring, because peace again can sound like nothingness. And can we live permanently disidentified from the mind? I don't know. I still get pulled into my mind. I still experience suffering. I haven't transcended all this stuff. And yet, in the moments when I am able to step back, I experience that. And every time I do, I think, why don't I do this more often? Probably because I'm a human being and I just get very attached to my own thoughts and my own feelings and my own ideas, when none of that even matters. So some of the ways to disidentify from your mind, you can start with even anytime you notice something you're thinking or judging, to just a reframe of saying, my mind is saying this, or my mind is telling me this, rather than I think or I am. When you say things like, I am a failure, I am a disappointment, my life is terrible, those things in that moment are instantly your reality. You experience that. It doesn't even matter whether they're true or not, it is your reality. Whereas when you step back and you go, oh, my mind is telling me I'm a failure. My mind is believing my life is terrible. And to get to that place as well, beyond the mind, and this I think is the biggest challenge, and probably why I still, not necessarily able to do this as frequently as I want to, is because it often involves getting still and getting quieter. We have minds that are very loud. And I've had this a few occasions where I have gone away for a weekend and just disconnected from all technology, no TV, not taking anything in. Only done this a handful of times, but this is what happens when I do. For the first 24 hours of no distractions, it's like it's physically painful. My mind wants to argue against it, like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the point? It will fight for its food because we're constantly feeding our minds, whether it's social media, podcasts, even YouTube. But if we want to have transcendent experiences, We have to step into experience, which means stepping into our own experience, not just listening to other people talking about theirs. Being alone with your mind can feel like walking over hot coals. And so this is why it's so important, if you're going to try and do this, that you are practicing, my mind is telling me this, my mind is telling me that. Because if you stay alone with your mind and you have a very loud, angry, critical mind, without anything to use to distance yourself from it, it feels like you can just drown in the negativity of what your mind might be producing. And here's the other thing. When we practice getting beyond our minds, that actually changes our minds. And our mind starts to work with us. Our mind can then remind us that we're not our mind. People who practice meditation regularly, they talk about these transcendental blissful states, but they also talk about the difference that it makes to their lives when they're not meditating. Meditation doesn't have to be about stopping the mind. It usually isn't. It's usually about watching the mind. And if you've never done it before, or even if you have, let's just do it now quickly together. If you've got this far, there's something in this video that's keeping you here. So if I just ask you now to just watch and wait. I think Eckhart uses the analogy of like a cat waiting at the mouse hole for the mouse to pop out. It's that kind of, okay, I'm ready, I'm waiting, I'm looking, I'm listening. I'm not the mind, I'm just going to watch what my mind does in this moment. So just try this now. Just watch and see what the first thought is that comes up. What came up for you? You can let me know in the chat below if you want to. Sometimes people find this and they find nothing comes up and they have the moment of a still mind. Sometimes the mind will start to go, oh, I don't think I'm doing this right, or oh gosh, why am I having to stop and do this in the middle of a YouTube video? Whatever it does not matter what the thought was. The practice is you being able to go, oh, look what my mind did then. And of course, if you want more formalized practices of this, there's loads of mindfulness, free mindfulness tools out there. Pick your flavor. But I don't think you have to start out sitting in like meditation for 15 minutes, half an hour, just little moments throughout the day where you pause and you deliberately stop to watch, what is my mind doing? The goal here, or the hope if you like, is to move out of this dynamic whereby your conditioned mind is your master and you're just the slave that has to do whatever it says. But neither is it about you becoming the master and dominating your mind. I think of it more as like understanding the mind and what it's trying to do, because I think this is how we improve our experience of ourselves. I talk about this a lot in my videos, that I think the way through life is to have a better relationship with ourselves. And what could be more important than a better relationship with our mind that for most of us creates our experience of ourselves. If you are someone who is constantly trying to make changes and trying to figure out what's possible, I've got an episode on my latest podcast, which I'm going to link to at the end. It's episode 3. I tried to change, but my personality said no. And it talks about the possibilities and the potential limitations of how much we can change who we are. So you might want to check that out here. But until next time, stay conscious and keep growing.